We start with the aftermath of a crime that last month became a major news item.
Police forensic teams conduct a fingertip search of a field close to the murder victim's home.
Neighbours say Mrs. Brown was very security conscious and was even the organiser of the local neighbourhood watch scheme.
Such a brutal murder as that, somebody must have spoken. The person who did it must have confided in somebody.
For today's case, we have an episode that's a little bit different. Thames Valley Police approached us for assistance in solving a case that is 30 years cold. A case that is shocking, brutal, and left a family devastated and searching for answers. It is our hope that by shining a spotlight on this case, it will give them the justice they have waited over 3 decades for. Let's go back to Tuesday the 11th of April 1995. A builder, Nick Marshall, and his son arrived at a large setback house on Spriggs Holly Lane in Radnage, a tiny village in Buckinghamshire, England. They were booked in to carry out some work at the home belonging to the Brown family. As Nick got closer, he heard the burglar alarm going off inside the house. He looked through the window and saw a woman lying at the bottom of the stairs. Her name was Janet Brown, and she was 51 years old. Janet had been born in Southampton and was described as a kind and loving woman, and that was reflected in the career she chose. After training as a midwife, she later worked in the Public Health and Primary Care Department with Oxford University at John Radcliffe Hospital as a research nurse. Janet was described by her family as being a peaceful person. She was someone who loved travelling and being out in nature. She was married to her husband Graham, who worked in the pharmaceuticals industry, and they were proud and devoted parents of 3. Zara, Roxanne and Benedict. Her daughter Zara had moved away to London after getting her first job after graduating university. Benedict, who was 21, was also away while he completed his degree, and the youngest, Roxanne, 17, still lived at home. Zara said that Janet was always there for them, especially when Graham's work took him abroad. Her family was everything to her, and she was a really good mom, she said. The family home was on an 11-acre estate in a remote and set-back farmhouse. Although this area was peaceful and quiet and not a whole lot happened, it had recently been targeted by burglars, and Janet was very security conscious and was not taking any chances, joining the local neighbourhood watch and installing a panic alarm in the house. And now, she was lying at the bottom of her stairs. So what had happened the day before, on Monday the 10th of April 1995? As Janet left work, she said goodbye to her colleagues and headed to her Volvo to go home. The house was in the process of being sold, and an offer had been put in which had been accepted. That day, Roxanne had gone out with a friend at the last minute to celebrate them passing their driving test, leaving the house at around 3:30, and Graham was away in Switzerland for work. Janet was going to be home alone. At some point at around 8ish, she spoke to one of Roxanne's friends on the phone. When her builder Nick called to talk about the work the following day at around 8:20, he got no response. Neither did her husband when he called at 9. A neighbour had driven past the house at roughly 10 p.m, and she heard the alarm going off, but she didn't hear it when she drove back later. The external alarm would have been going off for about 20 minutes. The internal alarm, however, continued to sound. The alarms had been triggered by the 2 panic buttons. One was beside Janet's bed, and the other was by the front door. The police were not sure which panic button she had pushed. Nick discovered her body the following morning at around 8 a.m. Her hands had been handcuffed behind her back, and brown parcel tape was covering her mouth. There was blood spatter on the walls and ceiling. Janet had suffered massive head injuries, being struck repeatedly with something like a crowbar. She was naked, restrained, and gagged. But there was no evidence of a sexual assault, and it's not believed that there was a sexual motivation behind her murder. Also, the house had been obviously and extensively searched by the killer, but nothing appeared to have been stolen. Her clothes had been folded neatly by the side of her bed, and her dressing gown was dropped on the floor. But how had the killer got into the house? Well, that was immediately obvious to the investigators. The killer had tried to cut a hole through the patio door using glass-cutting equipment. Before the second panel was smashed, they'd also brought the tape and the handcuffs to the house with them. This was an unusual and very puzzling case.
Police forensic teams conduct a fingertip search of a field close to the murder victim's home.
Detective Superintendent Mike Short had spent 28 years as a policeman, and he had never seen a case like this. This was not a house that appeared to be unoccupied. It was obvious there was someone home. We also travelled to Radnage to film footage for this episode, and even we were struck by just how rural it was and how remote it was. It really is a place that you have to know well in order to not get lost. Why would someone attempt to break in knowing that there was someone home? Why even make an attempt to cut the glass and then risk being heard by even more people by smashing it? There was no reason for her to have been so viciously attacked. She was handcuffed and would not have been able to fight back. Based on the call that she had taken and then the subsequent calls she had missed, along with the alarm, the police theorised that she had been murdered at some point between roughly 8:15 p.m. and 10:15 p.m. Officers were talking to neighbours and people in the area. Had anyone heard something out of place or seen something that didn't look right? Those small, maybe on the surface, inconsequential details could hold the key. Janet hadn't mentioned that she was worried she was being stalked or followed, nor had she ever shown concern for being at home by herself. The investigation was enormous. A fingertip search of the gardens and wider area was done, and the entire home was examined for fingerprints. The police made 2,500 inquiries, and roughly 2,000 witness statements were taken. Janet's daughter Roxanne said the days that followed felt surreal and strange, and she remembered going to the supermarket and there just being rows upon rows of newspapers with her mother's face on them. She said that she and her friend were meant to be staying at the house with Janet that night, but understandably my friend's mom was a little bit nervous about her driving quite a distance when she'd literally just passed her test. So our plans changed that day, which I've always felt really guilty about, that I wasn't there with her that night. A post-mortem was carried out and it revealed an extremely violent death. She'd been hit in the face, and the marks on her body showed that she had been forced to lie down on her back. The tape around her nose and mouth had been so tight that she likely would have suffocated in a matter of minutes. The weapon that was used to kill Janet has never been found. To get from the door to the bedroom would have taken the killer around 30 seconds, and this was where police believed they came face to face, and a small piece of tape was located on the bedroom floor. The key to the handcuffs was found under her body. Even though the alarm was going off, the killer remained inside the house. Diluted blood had been found on the bedroom light switches, which showed they had washed their hands and then went back upstairs. What made this case even stranger was that most burglars would not take a chance knowing that someone was inside the house, so often would wait to ensure that the house was empty, and whoever had done this had taken the time to try and cut a man-sized hole in the patio door. Then, for whatever reason, they decided to just smash their way in. There were 5 theories that were being considered. Number 1, a robbery gone wrong. This option didn't seem to make much sense. Why strike at night when there is a car parked in the driveway and lights on and clearly someone's home? Also, it was obvious that the house had been searched, but nothing had been stolen. While the television and VCR were unplugged, they hadn't been removed. The killer hadn't hunted for a safe or a lockbox, and £100 in a pot in the kitchen was still there. And also, most burglars would not make so much noise to gain entry. Number 2, a contract killing. This was another theory that didn't seem to really hold up. If it was, would a hitman not have committed the murder then and there in the bedroom, rather than waiting for over an hour and remaining in the house with the alarm blaring to look around? Number 3, a sexually motivated killing. This was ruled out almost as quickly as it was brought up, as there were no signs of any sexual violence. Number 4, industrial espionage. This was suggested as Graham did have a high-powered and important job as a research chemist, so could this have been linked to his work and someone trying to find out information? Graham himself said he didn't think so, and this was another theory that went nowhere. Number 5, a kidnapping gone wrong. This was also discounted, as the killer had made no effort to remove her from the house. There is no theory to explain what happened that night which makes perfect sense, said then Detective Superintendent Mike Short in April 1996. There are aspects of every theory which are contradicted by the facts, and policemen deal in facts. The intruder showed a fair amount of planning, He had an iron bar or truncheon, 2 types of tape, handcuffs, a glass cutter, and probably a torch. I have a gut feeling that it wasn't a burglary. He didn't react like a normal burglar. More than 99% of burglars would run on hearing the alarm go off. This one not only continued his murderous attack, but coolly washed his hands and went upstairs again. We don't know the motive. In most murders, once you've got the motive, then you're a long way to cracking it. There are no indicators that Mrs. Brown had a boyfriend. Everything points to the fact she was a respectable woman who doted on her family. Her husband was definitely in Switzerland when she was killed, and he had nothing to gain by her death.
We start with the aftermath of a crime that last month became a major news item.
She was a super person. She was warm and friendly. She was very loyal to her family. She looked after the kids very well. And as well as that, she was quite a determined person, quite a plucky person.
I was driving along Spriggs Holly Lane towards Radnage and just past the Brown's house on my left in an area locally known as the Triangle. I saw a car parked quite a way back off of the road. We take note of this sort of thing because of the burglaries that have been around here in the past, and it makes us suspicious if we see cars parked at this time of night.
We know that the person who carried out this act must have been heavily bloodstained. And so I would appeal to anybody, friend, relative, who knows anything, to come forward. In addition, such a brutal murder as that, somebody must have spoken. The person who did it must have confided in somebody. So I really would ask anybody to come forward to stop it happening again. In addition, there is a £10,000 reward.
We're talking about Monday the 10th of April, which is the week leading up to Easter, and somebody that evening would have gone home with really a lot of blood.
There's no doubt at all about that, a lot of blood.
Now, the only other things that you might have as clues, we've got some things here which come from them. That taping of the window, which is a very peculiar thing to do, which was using this sellotape all-weather tape, which is a sort of rather unusual thing, not only to do, but substance to use.
That's right. It's not common. It's not the normal sellotape. It's used just to repair greenhouses and cloches. Sellotape have only supplied 1,300 in this year to local area. So it is unusual. And if you couple that with the other items...
And the other items are that this was used to restrain her as well. This is just all masking tape. And obviously, people can buy that all over the place. These handcuffs, which were used to restrain her as well. Again, I mean, these presumably are fairly common, these things.
Yeah, they're ever so common, and we certainly wouldn't be able to trace where they came from. But again, you've got to add to that the glass cutter, the instrument that was used to break the window. All most unusual things. If you put them together, it could well mean something to somebody.
So what you want is somebody who maybe sold somebody a whole variety of these things together, somebody who can put together a picture or a jigsaw puzzle, as it were.
Absolutely, or anybody's seen people with it.
It had now been 10 months since the murder of Janet Brown. The police received 2 answer phone messages from a man who didn't identify himself. The police said it was not likely that these were hoax calls, and what the man was saying and how he was saying it suggested he had information that was significant. An appeal was put out for this man to come forward, but he didn't. He was never heard from again and made no attempt to get back in touch with the police. In June 1996, a 47-year-old man was arrested on suspicion of the murder of Janet Brown. His identity was not released to the public and he was interviewed at High Wycombe Police Station, but this too, like all of the other leads in this case, would go nowhere. But one thing was certain. Life for the Brown family had been completely shattered, and nothing was ever going to be the same again. In most cases, the passage of time offers at least some chance to process grief, allowing loved ones to slowly begin to heal. But when a murder remains unsolved and the person responsible is not brought to justice, that kind of closure does not come with time. If anything, the years only make the pain sharper, as every day that passes without answers leaves the family with even more questions and a deepening sense of injustice.
Family life was totally shattered. I found myself having panic attacks and just crying uncontrollably. I guess all the trauma just has to come out, doesn't it, at some point? Mum was always there for us. Like many mums, she was juggling working life with family life, but her family was everything to her. She was a really good mum. She was calm and kind and gentle. She was alone that night, sort of defenceless, and that's why it's so sort of hard to try and understand why somebody felt the need to handcuff her and be so violent and brutal towards her. She was bludgeoned to death, which is a horrible thought, but it just is baffling.
The family never went back to the house. The horror of what had taken place meant it no longer felt like home. Roxanne later moved to London to live with Zara, and she would commute to finish off her A-level exams. They were extremely, understandably frightened and vigilant with security, putting grills on the doors and windows. Zara would suffer panic attacks and wake up at night listening for noises. As time continued to pass, the years slowly added up, and before long it would be 2 decades since Janet's murder. For those left behind, that passage of time creates a strange kind of limbo. The world continues to move forward, but they couldn't truly move on themselves, still carrying all of the pain that existed from the beginning. In 2015, there would finally be a breakthrough.
Today is the 20th anniversary of the murder of Janet Brown. The Major Crime Investigation Review Team have commenced a review of the circumstances surrounding Janet's death and have submitted items to forensic scientists in the hope of using advancements in forensic science in the intervening 20 years. This has produced a DNA profile.
It belonged to a man who was not a member of the Brown family, but so frustratingly it did not match anyone on the police database, which has more than 6 million people on it. Peter Byrne wouldn't reveal which item the DNA had been taken from in the house, and he appealed to the public to put names forward of people who could have potentially been involved. He said, "Somebody out there knows who killed Janet. We're asking them to make contact." He said he still believes that there are people out there who have information. "We have a DNA profile that was left at the scene. With the DNA evidence we have, we can easily implicate or eliminate people from our investigation. To try and limit the pool, more than 1,000 men were screened and ruled out." All of the unanswered questions and extremely strange events that took place that night are both baffling and confusing. Janet was not a woman that had enemies. Nothing was stolen. It's a case that simply does not make sense.
Our mum's murder was planned and brutal, and the horror of her death stays with us every day. She was attacked and killed in our family home, a place where we should all be safe. There is new DNA evidence which will help Thames Valley Police bring the killer to justice, but we need your help to find them. If you know or suspect anything, no matter how small you think it might be, you can call the Major Crime Investigation Review Team on 101 or Crime Stoppers on 0800 555 111. You can call anonymously if you have to and help us find who did it. She was a kind and loving person, and her death broke our hearts.
Thames Valley Police is encouraging people to come forward even if the person they suspect is dead. If that is the case, DNA samples can be taken from relatives to compare against the DNA of the offender found at the scene.
For her family, this senseless murder continues to haunt them.
It never goes away. It's sort of made me very wary of people in certain situations. I'm quite security conscious. If I won't go for a run on my own in the woods or in the countryside. If I'm sort of going anywhere, I always make sure somebody knows where I am.
A reward of up to £20,000 has been offered by Crime Stoppers for information which leads to a conviction.
Back here, 30 years on the face of it, so little has changed. Still quiet, rolling Buckinghamshire countryside. Perhaps the last place you'd ever expect such a serious crime to be committed. But one thing's also not changed, and that's the big question. Who killed Janet Brown?
It has been over 30 years since she was killed, and her family have waited far too long for answers. With modern advances in forensic science and finding the DNA profile, investigators are closer than ever to finding the truth. But that final breakthrough still depends on one crucial missing link. Our hopes is that by keeping Janet's story alive, By getting as many eyes on this case as possible, someone will come forward or a new lead will emerge. Justice for Janet and for the loved ones she left behind is long overdue. If you do have any information, please email Major Crime Review Team at thamesvalley.police.uk. That's Major Crime Review Team at thamesvalley.police.uk, or call 101.